Well, hello, everybody that got on board. I'm Bill Robertson from the Golf Heritage Society, and it's a pleasure to be with all of you this evening. And it's a great pleasure to have Barry Hackett here with us, and George Petro handling the control panel. Thank you, George. I met Barry 4.5 years ago, and the way that I met him was not directly, it was indirectly. Myself and Paul Adams, a fellow GHSer, we wanted to go down and play Oakmont, and in our possession, I had a putter with the name Peter Robertson on the back, and Paul had a club. I forget what club it was, but the name on the back was Tommy Anderson, and those two gentlemen were the first and second golf pros at Oakmont. And as they built their collection, they were very much interested in getting those clubs in their possession, especially the Anderson club. And it turns out we were negotiating with our member now, who's the part-time historian. Didn't know it at the time, and we really wanted to play the course. They didn't want us to play it, and they had offered us a lot of money, but they relented to let us play. We brought a friend down, and Barry was kind enough to take us around that day, play with us, and treated us so kindly, and also gave us a unbelievable tour of the artifacts and the clubhouse. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to my friend and GHS member, Barry Hackett.
Thank you. Well, I assume that a lot of you got into and started in the game because either a father or a family member got you interested in it. That certainly was the case for me. My father was a longtime member at Oakmont. He joined when I was 11 years old, 1965. But he did a couple things that really piqued my interest, besides getting me started in the game. He was responsible for the clubhouse and the course becoming the first National Historic Landmark in the country for a golf course. And he spent a couple years working on this, and the culmination was when they came to give us the plaque. Ex-President Gerald Ford came, and he was the keynote speaker. My father got to golf with him, so that was one of his highlights of his golfing career. And he also had the first history book for Oakmont written. It was 75th anniversary in 1978. And he was fortunate to play a lot of great courses around the world, but more importantly in the United States. And that kind of got me thinking about it. And although I didn't act on my quest to play so many courses until long after he had passed away, I started about 15 years ago to play the top 100 in the country. And I was able to successfully complete that. And then I decided to go after and play all the U.S. Open courses that were in existence. There are 51, or 4 that are no longer in existence. And that's what the topic is about tonight, the U.S. Open courses. How did I manage to do all this? I always said I've been blessed to get to all these places. It's not because of my game that got me there. I've said for many years that golf is truly a contact sport. And I believe that very much. I've met a lot of great people over the years that have helped me to get onto other courses as I've helped them. And belonging to Oakmont certainly didn't hurt either. That opens a lot of doors, especially when Bob Pro was the head pro. He knew everybody in the business, and I'm honored to say that he's been a friend and for 40 years of mine. In 2012, I joined a small golf society that was just getting started the year before. Most of them I called my kids because they were about my children's age, and they were all trying to do the same thing, play the top 100 courses. So that helped a lot because someone played just about every course, so you could talk to them and they'd set it up with it. So that's how I got started in this journey. Very happy to continue. I'm as I said, I've played 6 of the 14 British Open courses, 44 of the 74 PGA host courses. all the US Open courses and all the courses that have hosted the Masters. So the PGA had a long way to go. And we were talking before we started that courses that have hosted the major championships. And you look back into the 1914s when the PGA started, a lot of courses that most of you have probably not heard of hosted PGA championships in the early days, as the USJ did too. So the other thing I've said about myself is my entire golfing career, I've been average at best, but my love of the game, I'm a +8. Love of the game and the history. So as far as my favorite courses, including non-US Open courses, I've for quite a few years talked about 3, and I always say that I never include Oakmont in the discussion because that's my home course. That's a little unfair. I'm a little biased. But now people start asking me, well, what are your 5 favorite? And since you guys paid so much to hear this talk tonight, you're the first ones to hear my top 5 courses. And they are in alphabetical order: Chicago Golf Club, which has hosted 3 US Opens. Cypress Point has never. Fisher's Island has never. Oakmont has hosted 9, and Shinnecock 6. So 3 of my top 5 are US Open courses or have been in the past. I'd love to see one go back to Chicago Golf. When I was there last year, I talked to a member and they said that the USJ was out and they want to do something. They don't think they could host a US Open there, but they want to do probably an amateur. They had the first women's senior amateur there a couple of years ago, but they wanted to extend some holes, and it was they were going to have crossing over fairways, and the membership and those that run Chicago Golf said we're just not interested to do things like that to host a tournament. So unfortunately, we probably aren't going to see that on TV anymore. So let's start with the first one, Chicago Golf. I think we have a few pictures to put up for that. I think Chicago Golf is probably the greatest course on a completely flat piece of property that I can imagine. We have a few pictures here. This is the Biarritz hole that Seth Rayner always puts. McDonald started it. Rayner came back and did a lot of the work, some changes, and finished it. But they have template holes that they put on all the courses, and this is the Biarritz with the big valley running through it. A lot of squared off greens, which was another Rayner feature that we can see on this one. This is just another example of a green. The greens are very large. And then this is the Redan hole that he always has on a course. This, most of them go from top right to lower left. Few courses I've seen have had a reverse Redan. One is Fox Chapel here in Pittsburgh. And then this is the Punch Bowl hole. Has anyone in the audience played a Rayner course? Show of hands if they have. Okay. I'm a big fan of Rayner. I think I've played 19 at this point. I'd love to play about that many additional ones. And this is the clubhouse at Chicago Golf. It is truly old school in there. The locker rooms, I think, are the way they were when the club was built, late 1800s. Battery is running low. Is that okay? Is that yours, George?
It is. Gotta find
Okay.
out what's going on here. I've never had that before. I got unplugged. At least it told me.
All right, but the locker room of Chicago Golf, the nameplates on the lockers, they're metal lockers, but the nameplate is literally a 3x5 note card cut in half, and someone took a marker and wrote their name on it and stuck it in this little area. And it's I think that's the way they like it, just the way it's been since their grandfathers or great grandfathers were playing there. Next should be Cypress Point. Cypress Point, I describe as the best 16 and a half holes that I've ever seen on one golf course. You may have heard the 18th hole is not very well liked by everyone that I've talked to that's played there. It's a 90-degree dogleg right. Second shot goes up the hill, and there's cypress trees overhanging the fairway. So if you don't land your tee shot in a very small area, you're not going to be able to get to the green. I throw in the tee shot on one. It's over a hedge, and it's over 17-mile drive with the driving range on the right. Great approach shot to the green, but I just like to be a little different than everyone else. Everyone talks about the 17 great holes. I say the 16 and a half. It's the first par 3 on the front, third hole. The bunkering, I think, is just as good as I've ever seen. But I've also seen a few Mackenzie courses, and I tend to say I've never seen a Mackenzie course I didn't love. You can see how they put the bunkering right into the hillside. Just visually, I think beautiful work that he did. And that 17-mile drive that goes right through the course. And then 2 back-to-back par 3s that I can't imagine there's anywhere that has back-to-back par 3s as good as Cypress Point. This is the 15th hole. It's 9-iron wedge, and then you come to 16, which is about 220. If you're lucky, the wind's not coming too hard off the ocean there. But it just, in my opinion, a spectacular hole. And that is my Facebook picture on my account. Has been for a number of years. I think that's all we have. Oh, now we're at Fisher's Island off of New York, Long Island Sound. And the reason I like that, again, I like Rayner courses, but I think that this is probably Rayner's best work. Said that for a few years. A lot of people agree. But going out to Chicago Golf again last year, I'm not even sure it's Rayner's best work now. It's hard for me to decide between Chicago Golf and Fisher's Island, which one of his best courses. So it's kind of why I went to my 5 favorites instead of my 3 favorites. This is the Biarritz hole. This is just a hole playing down. Well, this is it. You can't see the gully going across the middle of the green on this from a distance, but believe me, it's up there. But the thing about Fisher's Island, all 18 holes, you can see Long Island Sound from each of those holes, and I think it's just a wonderful setting. Tough to get to. This is the double plateau green. In the distance, it's kind of looks like an infinity green with the water behind it. This is just one of their par 3s, their short par 3. And this is the Cape hole. The drive straight out to the left side of that house on the hill, and then you make about a 90-degree turn to the green that you can see just over the water, hopefully. About 1/3 the way in from the left side. I'm sorry, this is the short. The last par 3, 16. You always have a short hole. It's somewhere around 130. Okay, now we're to Oakmont. This, has anyone played Oakmont other than Bill? George? Couple hands, okay.
John R. has played it.
Okay. In person, I always ask how long ago, because the course has changed a little bit over the last 20 years. But I won't ask that today. But this is the practice putting green that's attached to the 9th green. And then we start through the back 9. This is number 10 coming down the hill from the clubhouse. Green slopes away from you. This is the 11th, the short par 4. Tee shots in the distance, just to the right of the two smoke stacks, which next time you come to Oakmont, you won't see those. Those were imploded last week. Long par 5, 12th. 2 days for the Open, they played at 667. The other 2 days, they played from the short tee at 636. But it's a long hole that runs away from you. Fairways slopes severely from left to right. And then the green runs away from you also. Short par 3, 13th with a pretty sizable mound on the right-hand side, just to the right of the little bit of bunker you can see on the left of the screen. 14th, the short hole, it's drivable. We are in the process of Gil Hands making some changes to the course, kind of to get it ready for the Open in 25, but kind of restoring it back to the way that Phones, the founder, had the course, using aerials from 1925, 27, and 35. So we've put some bunkers back in, further from the tee than they were in those years, but bunkers back in to make it look like it did back in that almost 100 years ago, basically. 15, long par 4, 499 yards. This is all we can see. Little 16, 231-yard par 3. 17, a drivable par 4 for some. It's not for me, but for some it is. I imagine that the vast majority of the players in the Open 2 years from now will be driving this hole. From the back, it's 13. We had a tee about 20 years ago in a different spot. I haven't talked to Gil personally, but I've told the pro staff and others, he really needs to look at that to see if a tee could be put back there, because it would make the hole 25 yards longer. Now, it wasn't that way when the Phones were running it. I think out of necessity of how far the guys are hitting it now, that we should do that. We'll see if it happens. Then 18 from the tee is one of the best looking 18th holes that I've seen. I'd put it up against anyone. I'd lose to Pebble Beach. I understand that, but it's just, unfortunately, I don't have one from the tee, but you see the entire hole, clubhouse in the background, you get a bonus point or two for that. And I feel it's the most difficult hole in the course to par. It's the 6th handicap, but that, as we know, that does not mean that's the 6th most difficult hole. I'm not going to go into how they assign stroke holes, but that's it for my top 5. I skipped over Shinnecock. I'm sorry. That's the 5th course of mine, my favorite. This is the 7th hole where they had the disaster in the last Open, the previous Open, where they had to water the green between every group on Sunday because it was so baked out. It was kind of a black eye for the USGA on letting it get to that condition, in my opinion. I think this is the 11th hole, very short par 3. The members describe it as the shortest par 5 in the world. It's only a wedge, but you can see from the front of it, the backside is the same way. You're either on the green or it's rolling down a hill or into a bunker. It's not one that you probably want to play every day, but it'd be hard to turn down Shinnecock if you got the invite every day. This is 15th hole. Just a longer hole that I'm showing, and very few trees on the course. Used to be a lot more. Then I just broke down into a few categories. Top 3 greens that I've seen. Chicago Golf I mentioned, Oakmont, and the Alotian Club, which is in Arkansas. That was started by Wayne Stevens. He was past chairman of Augusta. The son could not get in, is the story that I heard. So he built his own course. And there are a number of those around the country. They couldn't do what they wanted to do, so they decided to build their own course. And I was there, Jack Stevens, it just came to me. I was there in 2018, I believe it was. And they just had the Western Am, and they told us that they slowed down the greens to 13.5 the day that we played them. But it wasn't just the speed, the undulations. There wasn't a mark on the green, and they just had a tournament. I couldn't find a ball mark on the green. And they putted just spectacular. And I followed that up in 2016 when the Open was at Oakmont. There's a friend of mine down in South Carolina that got us on, and he got us on through Rich Beam, who is a PGA champion. And he apparently has a talk show. And the guy called in because he knew he was a member there and said, is there any way I could play the course? He set it up. 2016 at the Open, he was working for one of the radio stations. And I saw him and I introduced myself and said that longtime member at Oakmont. And I thought that the Alotian greens, when I saw them that day, were the best greens that I had ever seen. Or played in, I shouldn't say ever seen, had seen it in years' time. Okay. Almost all those courses, except for the Alotian, are classic courses, which Golf Digest describes as being built before 1960. Most of them were back in the golden age of architecture. Just going to name a few others that I think are great courses that we aren't really going to talk about, but Friars Head in New York, I think is Core Crenshaw's best work. Most people will say Sand Hills. I like Friars Head even more than Sand Hills. And as I say about golf courses, it's like artwork. Everyone has a different opinion on what they're looking at. So not everyone will agree with me, but I had the opportunity to tell Core and Crenshaw both at different points that I thought that was their best course, and they didn't argue with me, but I wouldn't expect them to. A couple others, Banded Dunes Resort out in Oregon. I think it's just spectacular. Golf Digest has all 5 of their courses in the top 100. Is that correct? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not. But it is. I describe it as the best place you can go to golf that doesn't require a passport. It's just spectacular. All 5 courses are great. They have 2. We'll soon have 2 par 3 courses that are spectacular. It's all the golf you would want. It's not lengthy. Of course, yeah, with the varying tees, you can always get a course that's to your liking as far as length goes, but it's a spectacular trip. I've been fortunate. My wife is from Oregon, so I've been there 3 times. And I'd go back again. Gaza Ranch is another new course. It's in Montana, kind of tough to get to. But those are some. And Victoria National is another one in Indiana that I think is a great course. And a couple international ones, Cabot Cliffs and Cabot Links up in Canada. Not easy to get to. It's pretty far north. But I think those are 2 spectacular courses. And I've had a lot of write-ups in the last couple of years since they opened. Okay, let's go to a lot of courses recently, especially Golden Age courses, have had restorations or renovations. Restoration, hopefully, for some of these classic courses, because that means they're trying to do everything to get it the way it was originally, restore it to what it was, versus the renovation, which is the architects putting their own thoughts into what it should be. And these, I would say, are all restoration. Inverness is the first one. These pictures are from a number of years ago. I have a couple in here from 22, but the others are before they cut down trees. If you toggle between this one and the next one, this is the 13th hole, and this is what it looks like now. And the other one's what it looked like about 10 years ago.
Wow.
And it's just an example of they were tree lined, just as Oakmont was. And then the next 2 will be the 18th hole. This is what it was. And this is what it is now. Southern Hills just had the PGA last year, and it's a Perry Maxwell course. And I went out in 2012 and played this, and then the next day played Prairie Dunes. And I must have said 10 times during the round of Prairie Dunes, I can't believe that these two courses were built by the same person. They were so different. Back in 2012, the bunkering here at Southern Hills, they were all round or oval shaped bunkers. No differentiation. You almost couldn't tell one hole from another by looking at the green complexes. Prairie Dunes, they're all sculpted. Southern Hills is now, if you watch, I'm sure you watched the PGA last year, the course just doesn't look like this anymore. And that was a Gilhan's restoration. You can just see that the bunkers look the same on each hole. Okay, this is Baltusrol. I think they've sided with the PGA now, so we're probably not going to see them having a US Open now that they're sided with the PGA. This is the fourth hole. It's a long par 3. The next picture is looking back from behind the hole to the clubhouse. Beautiful setting, beautiful clubhouse. Reese Jones redid this hole. I can't remember what the year was. I believe it was in the 60s. And the membership thought that the hole was too difficult. It was too long to carry the water, so on. He came out, you may have heard this story. He teed up a ball, and he had a hole in one. And he said, I think the hole's plenty easy. And that was the end of the story. The membership didn't complain anymore about it. But it is a beautiful hole. A couple more pictures of Baltusrol. Still in the renovation. These are all pre-renovation. And you can get online and look up almost any course that's had a renovation work done, and you can get pictures of the holes. I should have done that to compare, but I didn't.
Am I into Oakland Hills?
I think we're in Oakland Hills now.
Yep, I just flipped in.
Another Gilhan's restoration a few years ago. They have an open coming up in 2034. But same thing, they took down a lot of trees. That's the common denominator, I think, in every restoration work that's done, especially to the Golden Age courses. 100 years ago, most of these courses were built on farmland. And it was after that people started planting trees. In the case of Oakmont, it was the 1953 Open, and a New York writer referred to the course in an article that he was writing as the ugly brute. Well, the membership was fine with the brute part, got a little sensitive about ugly, and there was a tree planting beautification program in the late 50s, early 60s, and 5,500 trees were planted. Chairman of the grounds committee in 1991 thought that we should restore it back to the way it was intended, what the phones had. And it's a pretty common story. I don't know if you've heard it or not, but the trees literally were cut down at nighttime. All the interior trees came out in the middle of the night. And it was several years before the membership realized that there were some trees missing. Because there'd be a row of 12, and 1 month they'd come and take the first and 8th one out. Then another month they'd take another one out and go into some others. And they would come out and they'd lay down these huge tarps, cut down the tree, pick up the tarps with all the twigs and sticks, grind up the stump, put a piece of sod over it. And people didn't know. And there are 2 stories. One was mine. I was playing at 8:10 one Saturday morning, and between 1 and 9 were a lot of trees. I pulled a tee shot, and I'm looking around. I know something's different, can't figure it out. And I see 2 guys from the grounds crew on the 12th hole. And I asked them if we had done something between 1 and 9, and they just stood there because they were not supposed to talk to the membership about what was going on. But I knew them, so they finally said yes. I said, what changed? He said, we cut down a couple of trees. I said, when? He said, this morning. I teed off at 8:10 and couldn't find any evidence that they had worked on trees there. So that they were very good at it. And the other story is a little more colorful. There was an older member who on the 12th hole, every round, that was time for that nature called him. And he had his favorite tree that he would go over and water. And one Tuesday he played and did the same thing. Thursday came out and his tree was gone. He started asking questions. What happened to my tree? So the words started to get out. And as Bob Ford has said many times, the caddies ratted them out. They're the ones that kind of spilled the beans to the membership because, of course, they know the land and the trees better than anybody, being out there on a daily basis. I think the last one we have is Congressional. I was there in the fall of 2011, and so these are all restorations, and this one was being done by Andrew Green, or was done by Andrew Green. And I've said that Robert Trent Jones was kind of known as the open doctor. He went around before the courses had opens and did what he thought was needed to be done to host an open. He's obviously since passed away, and if he's the open doctor, then I think Gil Hands should be called the major doctor because he's doing it for both PGA courses and US Open. I mentioned 3 that he did: Southern Hills, Baltusrol, and Oakland Hills. The other 2 that I'm showing are Andrew Green, and Gil is doing Oakmont now. He also did Wingfoot. He's a very busy guy right now with Open and PGA courses. Is the next picture the same view? You can't see a tree on this side of the clubhouse, and this is a kind of zoomed in picture from pretty far back, so you can't see the trees on the side. But I don't know how many thousands of trees they also took out. Someone asked me when how many trees did we take out at Oakmont? I say all but 2, because nobody knows the number. It's north of 12,000 that we took out, and there are 2 left. Okay, so now we're on to some courses that have hosted the Open that may not be as well known. This is Myopia Hunt Club, and they had an Open in 1894. No, I'm sorry, it was built in 1894. And they had 4 Opens very early on. It's a fun course. It's not long. They have some interesting green complexes, and they have a creek that goes through. They also, at the Hunt Club, the horses walk on by as you're playing. And what you can't see, just on the other side of the 2 guys sitting on the bench, they have 5-gallon containers. One has iced tea, one has lemonade. So you make your own Arnold Palmer or you wait for the group to clear. And that's my favorite drink, so I spent a little extra time there. This is the 9th hole. We'll get a close-up to it. It's a par 3, short distance, but a pretty nasty bunker on the right side, not very wide. And as you can see from the green, you're coming in lengthwise on this hole, and it's not very wide either. There may be one more. Yeah, there is after everyone's cleared. Deep bunker, obviously, they have steps coming out 3 different directions and a very narrow green. That's one more from Myopia Hunt. Maybe one. No. Okay, so now we're on Newport Country Club, where the first amateur was played. First amateur and Open were played. It was built in 1894 also. It was 9-hole course when they played the Open, the first Open there. Played it 4 times over 2 days. This is from the balcony right outside the men's locker room. That's the first hole. Again, not a very long course, but a fun course to play. A lot of cross bunkers, many of which aren't in play. I mean, this one I think is less than 100 yards off the tee. But I think it's visually it's very good. Par 3 here. This is 10. Again, an uphill par 3, which seemed to be very popular back in those days, so that you could not see the green. This, I think, is the 15th hole, but a lovely large clubhouse right up on the highest point on the property.
Wow.
There's a little better view of it. And an even better view. And this is the back of the clubhouse. The 18th green, very much slope back to front. As I said, a fun course to play. I'm going to switch over to the hard courses now. 2 of them, Oak Hill, which we haven't shown. Everybody saw that very recently. I've played it before and after the restoration. I thought it was very difficult before, and it's even more difficult now, in my opinion. Most of the greenside bunkers are near vertical walls. If you get in the far side, there's an example. You get in the far side of the bunker, you have to hit a shot almost straight up in the air. Good sized greens, a lot of movement in the greens. But in my opinion, a very difficult course. And these are all, unfortunately, from, this was before the restoration work. I threw in some that I wanted to say a couple of things about Oakmont when talking about difficult courses. Before the meeting started, we were talking about when they were going from the rubber ball to the, from the gutty ball to the Haskell ball, right around 1900, 1901. Well, Oakmont was built in 1903, and Phones knew that that ball was going to change the game. So he built Oakmont almost 25% longer than the courses were of the day, expecting the ball to travel much further. And I don't know if he was just lucky or he was a genius, but that's why Oakmont is still not only a very good, difficult course, it's still a championship course. We've done very little to it. The 1919 Amateur, there was some couple holes that were lengthened, and it was over 6,700 yards for the 1919 Amateur. By the time the 27 Open, which was the first one there, it was 69.56, I believe, which was long for its day, but it stayed that from the 1927 Amateur through the 1927 Open through the 1983 Open. Couple yards here and there, which I think was just because of measuring device inaccuracies, the length of the holes. So it was good for all those decades for U.S. Opens. You go from 1953 to 1983. So you have four Opens, and the change in the winning score, there was a gap of 4 strokes from the highest to the lowest, without any length being added. And I think that, again, it's just, Phones only designed one course, and I have mixed emotions on that. Yes, I'm blessed and happy to be able to play his course, but what if he had made a few more? Would they have been just as good? We'll never know. But he and his son ran the course for almost 50 years, made slight modifications to it, but 15 of the 18 holes, the greens are original. to this day, never been regrassed. The 8th hole was moved in the early 50s when the turnpike came through. They moved it 10 yards. And in 1926, before the 25 amateur and the 27 open, the 15th and 16th holes were remodeled. 15 was made longer, 16 was moved. A little different direction, different tee and different green, but still the same length. It was 231-yard par 3, which in 1926 was a long par 3. It still is. So it just, in the work that Gil Hands is doing, he's not touching any of the perimeter, any of the interior movement of the greens. What he's doing is working on the perimeters of the greens, because over the years, all the sand that has been thrown out of the greenside bunkers, we've developed slopes on the sides, or wings, as I call them. He'll take up the sod, lay it back down more flat than what it is, and then expanding the greens. And he's finished with the front 9, and I'm looking forward to the next open, because there's some new hole locations with these expanded greens, and the fact that there was so much area on the perimeter of the greens where we could not put a hole location because it was too steep. Very good courses, but lesser known courses. This is on Wencia in Chicago. Built in 9 holes in 1895 and 9 holes added in 1899. They had an open, and what year was it? It was early, 1906. They had an open. As in most of the courses that had them very early on, most of them are just too short now, or they don't have the room for the infrastructure that a US Open needs. But this, if you're ever in Chicago and you can get on in Wencia, I think it's well worth it. It's a very nice golf course. The other one that I picked out is a very nice course. They had is Skokie, and that was built in 1904. They had the Open in 1922. Gene Saracen won it. Just a handful of pictures from Skokie that, like I said, I thought it was a very, very good course. All right. This is the last US Open course that I played, the final one. That obviously had the 1912 US Open. When they held it there, it was called Country Club of Buffalo. They moved to another piece of property and turned this over to the municipal government. It's a muni, Grover Cleveland Golf Course. They've had some issues over the years. VA hospital was built and they took some of the property, had to redo some of the holes, and then they lost another piece of property to new building. It's short, it's a little quirky, but I was out to play them all, so it didn't matter to me. And that's when I finished the last hole of the last US Open course to be played. My bride took the picture. My bride of 44 years. I was going through the list after I sent the written information to George to put up here as to courses that people may not know of, but had great major champions. And all these courses only had one US Open. Philadelphia Country Club, 1939. They're only open. Byron Nelson won. Riviera only had one. Ben Hogan won. Scioto's only had one. Bobby Jones won. Minnetonka Club in Minnesota, one open. Chick Evans won. I even threw in St. Louis Country Club that had one open. Lou Warsham, that name may not be familiar to a lot of you, but Lou Warsham was longtime pro at Oakmont from 1947 to 1979, 32 years. Lou was hired out of Burning Tree in Washington, D.C. He accepted the job and then he qualified for the Open. So he called up and said, can I start a couple weeks later because I qualified to play in the Open? Well, sure, go play. Well, he won. So he shows up the first day of work with the U.S. Open trophy. I've asked Bob Ford several times, where's your U.S. Open trophy? There were a couple others here that one-time U.S. Opens, and Belle Reve in St. Louis, Gary Player. Rayburn in outside of Boston, Walter Hagen. This one's still kind of current, but Chambers Bay, Jordan Spieth won. Champions in Houston, Orville Moody. Same thing with Aaron Hills and Brooks Koepka, although I think he's going to be up there with the greats in majors, even if he doesn't win anymore after winning 5. Interlaken, Bobby Jones won. Inwood in New York, Bobby Jones won there too. Midlothian in Chicago, Walter Hagen. North Shore, Johnny Goodman, last amateur to win a major.
33.
Northwood in Dallas, Julius Boros. That's a pretty good list of one-time clubs that a lot of people don't know about that have great major champions that won at those courses. I think it's pretty impressive, and it's a shame. I think courses like that, the membership are probably saying, "Oh, why can't we have another one? Why can't we have another one?" And there are lots of places that would like to, but it's not just having a good course. It has to be long enough for the players now, and you have to have a pretty big piece of property for all the infrastructure that's needed for an Open or a PGA. So those were some of the lesser known ones, but yet great champions. Now we can go to that last picture. The one thing I collect, I know that you guys in this group are great collectors, and I got started very late on this, about 15 years ago. And I decided, since I've played so many major championship courses, I'm going to try to get those that won their majors there to sign a scorecard. And what you're looking at is 58 U.S. Opens, where the champion has signed a scorecard for me. I only need 3 of all the living U.S. Opens. 2 of those are Brooks Koepka and 1 of Tiger's. Unfortunately, I know I will never get Brooks Koepka's. He will not sign scorecards or yardage books. And I was a little upset with that until I found out what his reasoning is. He is saving those for his future children so that they will have something that no one else has. And I can't say bad things about him because of that, because it's something unique he wants for his children. And we all want good things for our children. So it is what it is. Hopefully I'll get Tiger to fill in the other one that I don't have. He has signed 2 of those that you see on there for where he won U.S. Opens at Bethpage and Pebble Beach. But I need Torrey Pines. I guess now I'd like to open up the questions that I've rambled on for so long.
Hi, Barry. Not taking into account the courses that are, that can't be used because they're too short. What do you think is the weakest course that is hosted and open in the modern era?
Oh boy,
The least distinguished.
Oops.
Well, a recent one didn't get a lot of love from the media or the players was Chambers Bay. I played there 3 weeks to the day of the Sunday round, 3 years earlier on whatever it was, June, whatever the date was for the Sunday round of the Open. I was there 3 years earlier, and it was as green as any golf course I've seen. And that was the year before Oakmont. So all the people that were already at Oakmont went out to help for the week. And they came back and said they had 53 days without rain in the Pacific Northwest, which I spent a lot of time there because that's where my wife is from. Just unheard of. So it looked brown. It was brown. And then they had a lot of Poana in the greens. And 2 times I've heard this by commentators, and the first one was Johnny Miller at Pebble Beach when he criticized the greens being Poana, saying, "Oh, Poana is never any good." Well, I really wanted to contact CBS and say, "Johnny, you shot 63 at Oakmont, and they're 100% Poana. Do you remember that day?" But of course, we all know that he didn't have a telecast where he didn't talk about it. But the USGA is not going to put water on a course the week of a tournament unless it's just about to die. And then I'm still not sure that they would do it. So I would have to say Chambers Bay was the one that didn't look good. The players didn't like it. The media didn't like it either. Erin Hills, 2 years later, I made this comment after playing Chambers Bay to some members at Oakmont. I said, I think we're going to look really good sandwiched in between Chambers Bay and Erin Hills. Yeah, kind of facetious, but it turned out that way. The USGA thought Erin Hills make it as long as it can be, and they didn't even do that. The course tips out at about 8,800, and I think they played it just under 8,000. They thought distance was the way to keep the score down, and the players proved them wrong. So those two in the modern day would be my answer.
Thank you.
Barry, this is Steve Schlossman. You know, those early photos that you showed of some golf courses, particularly the Chicago one, but you mentioned the greens were big. In fact, a lot of those early courses that you have photos of, they look pretty big. And I guess maybe I was under some misunderstanding. I thought Oakmont's greens at their point of origin were about the biggest there had been, but was it the case that many of the great courses that were used for US Opens in the early years had these big greens that would be comparable to Oakmont's?
I'm going to give 2 answers to that. One, I don't think so, because as you know, the literature said that Oakmont had very large greens, and I have to go by that. Plus the fact that over years, greens shrink because of maintenance procedures, and it happened at Oakmont. We enlarged them in 2005, thought we were getting them back to where they were originally, and Gil came in and said, no, you didn't take them far enough. But some of those courses may not do that just from a cost standpoint, or just kind of by accident. The guy who's cutting the greens in the morning, they don't want to scalp the first cut of the rough, so they err on not going out far enough, and maybe it's only a quarter of an inch here and a quarter of an inch there, but over 100 years that adds up to a lot of green that they're missing.
Right.
So I'll stick with Oakmont. Back then for sure had the largest, and I think other than Chicago Golf, and I do not know what they've done in recent years, if they've enlarged them. The times that I've been there have all been in the last 10 years. So, but they are magnificent greens. They're just as pure as they come, I think.
Can you give us some sense? Where is Chicago Golf Club? It's not really in Chicago, is it?
Well, it's called Wheaton, Illinois,
Oh,
but
Wheaton. Okay, there you go.
you're not going to find it by looking for signs for it. The sign is about the size of my monitor, and it barely comes up above some bushes. So they aren't looking for drive-by people to come in.
Thank you.
It's 25 miles west of Chicago.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions for Barry, please? I did notice on the call that Mel Lucas is on the call. And Barry, you were mentioning the bunker restoration at Oak Hills. I wondered if Mel could speak to, when they do that, what does it entail in terms of the extra maintenance with the grass coming down so low as opposed to the sand up on the sides? Could you answer that, please, Mel?
Well, to go into removal of sand that's built up over a course of 50 to 85 years on some of these courses, it would almost take another Zoom or podcast to describe all the efforts that have to go into it. But I did it with Garden City Golf, which is one of the real old classics. And we were able to do it in-house. And in some instances, there were 18 to 20 inches of sand that had built up on numerous bunkers all around the putting greens. So what we did is, and as I allude to what has already been discussed, the sod that that was taken off at Oakmont was put back. We were in a different situation because of the depth of the sand, the people climbing up out of the bunkers over the faces, breaking sod down. Nothing was really salvageable, filled with crabgrass. It was just a hideous looking bunker. If it were in Scotland, it would be adored. But in America, where you've got a sand base, or the old courses had soil-based areas and then sand on top, they would absolutely dry out, shed water, and therefore the turf was always being compromised by drought. So, it's just a long procedure, but something that's done more now by some of the major architects, and keeps them busy. And anybody that's got an old golf course, you really have to look at it and get a good architect in, or with these old courses, you know exactly where the footprint was, because sand goes down to meet a soil. And once you've hit that soil, in the case of Garden City Golf, that was the footprint that was last left by Walter Travis when he did the redesign and building of the other 9-hole course in 1899. Now, if that shed any light, I don't know.
No,
but,
that's very helpful. Thank you very much, Mel.
Okay.
I would like to follow up on that, Melvin. Are the greens considerably larger now that they've done that process?
Well, when I was there, it was obvious that the greens had shrunk considerably, and I took them out. And I have been away from that golf course now for 35 years. I do visit it often. And over the course of several changes of golf superintendents, I saw the greens back to where they were when I took it over. And that was in 1966. And then Tom Doak came in and did a marvelous job of restoring. He brought everything back to where I had it, where Travis obviously had it. And I believe I gained for the club on all 18 holes 22,000 square feet of putting surface back in 1968, after some of my initial work on getting that old course back.
Great. Well, yeah, we're going through the restoration now. As I said before, in 2005, we thought we enlarged the greens back to where they were supposed to be. And the front 9 greens have been completed, and Gill averaged 1,100 square feet per green addition. So there's
Yours
A couple
shrunk.
times since it opened up on Memorial Day, and we're gonna have some great hole locations for future tournaments as well as member and guest play.
Wow. Barry, could I ask you, of all the courses for you, even with your connections, what one was the most difficult to make your quest?
Well, I was at 99 for 2.5 years before I got to play Augusta. So that would probably be it. And I would not ask anyone. There are 6 members at Oakmont that are members down there, and several that I know very, very well. And I would not ask them to do me that favor. So I just waited till it happened.
Terrific.
Now I'll give you one more. Let me think about a US Open course. Shinnecock is very difficult to get on. Especially in the summer months. Go in the fall, it's a little easier to, and their longtime pro was an assistant pro at Oakmont, but he said the same thing. I just can't get you out here in the summer months. But there's a place in the top 100 called Kenyatta in Illinois, across the border from Indiana. It's a farmer, and he decided to build a golf course. It sounds like a joke, but he had 3 daughters, and they all moved to Chicago and got married to guys that were golfers. So he decided to build a golf course so that they'd bring his daughters home a little more often. I think it's maybe 3 hours south of Chicago. So he decides everything. And the busiest year that they've had in the roughly 20 years that they've been open, they had 500 rounds of golf.
Wow.
I was fortunate. The only panelists or raters that he lets on are Golf Digest, and I knew a few. The guy invited me to go with him one time. So that's what happened. And we were the only 3 people on the golf course all day.
I think I read a story about him. He's a business type tycoon, and he had some interesting bridges on the course and whatnot.
Yes.
And anything else for Barry relative to the Opens or any of the other courses he's played?
Barry, it was great meeting you at Oakmont. I was down there twice in the last couple months, and both times I was there, one of our GHS members, Gil Hance, was out there working on the course, and it amazed me. He was actually out there scraping the course himself, so never got a chance to talk to him. But the question I have for you, when you were talking about your 5 favorite courses, of course, I love Laurel Valley Golf Club, but my question is, how did Augusta not get in one of your top 5? Or should it have?
Yeah, I had been down to watch the tournament 5 times before I played. And everyone's expectations and thought process going on. I would tell people it's not really a golf course. It's a museum. It's just everything is perfect. And on the telecast, they talk about a lot of balls go towards Rays Creek. And that's all you ever hear them say about the greens and the grain. I've never seen grain like they have at Augusta National. I mean, it's a crazy difference between going with or against the grain. And I told the caddy, I said, I'm not very good at reading grain, and I'm certainly not very good at judging it. Just give me percentages. Should I hit it 70%? Should I hit it 140%? It was very difficult. The experience was probably the best that I've ever had. Staying on property one night, the host was spectacular. The food was great. Everything was great. The golf course is great, but it isn't in my top 5. That's all I can say.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jamie Zimmerman. I'm based in Mountain, California. And I'm a Class A LPGA member, connected with John and Debbie Wake and some other folks, Taba. Anyway, it's good to be here. I had a couple of questions for you. So in a way, it feels like I grew up in the Midwest, so sort of green, in some ways, more wooded, narrower, older growth, all that kind of stuff. So I was used to those courses, and I've been on the West Coast, and go Palm Springs or Arizona, just more deserty courses, more wide open. Then you've got links courses. So, you've got some real sort of different aspects. And then you've got resort courses. So I'm just kind of wondering if you think there's anything inherently better or that you enjoy more, and what people, you and maybe others, think about those kind of different big categories of golf courses.
Well, I very much prefer Golden Age architecture. It may have come out with what I said. There are a lot of good modern courses that I like. Even a couple that are totally manufactured. Shadow Creek, they dug a hole 40 feet deep and started to build up, and it looks like an oasis there. And I just give Fazio credit for creating something like that. But I think the architects back in the Golden Age were very special. They knew how to make golf courses, and they knew how to do it without earth moving equipment, which was tough. Oakmont was built with I think it was 12 teams of horses and mules dragging a scraper blade behind them. And they moved very little ground to build that course. And that's what a lot of them were. Rayner, one of my favorites. People either like them or dislike them. Those that dislike them say, well, he built the same holes everywhere. And those that like them say, well, we figured out how to get those holes that he wanted on whatever piece of property he was given. So it's Golden Age versus everything else for me. As far as links versus parkland versus, I enjoy them all. And I think that's why I've played so many places, because it's the only sport where every time you tee it up, it's different. Baseball fields are kind of the same size, tennis courts are the same size, bowling lanes are the same size. It's unique, and it's seeing new courses and new areas that it gives me a lot of enjoyment. Because these days I'm not getting much enjoyment out of my score. So it's.
Hey, Barry, I have to ask you, with that beautiful shot of the Golden Gate Bridge behind you there, have you ever played the Presidio over in San Francisco?
I have not. I played with a lot of good ones in the San Francisco area, but not the Presidio. So
Great golf course. I like it.
It's on one of my lists. I have lots of lists to still get to, but unfortunately, I'm not sure how many I will get to at my age. But
the Presidio is now public. It's no longer belongs to the Army and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, you can get out there. Oh, you can play at Harding pretty easily as well.
I played Harding, and I played Sharp Park. Harding was the year that they had the PGA. And I kind of questioned how they were ever going to be ready for it, but they figured it out. And I'm not sure what magic wand they were waving, but.
Hey, Bill, this is Dick Johns. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I used to be the executive director of the Middle Atlantic section of the PGA. So I've been around the block a few times. I've been to Augusta to the Masters probably 17 times or something like that. And I have never seen a squirrel on the grounds of Augusta National. Can anybody here confirm how that can be? I don't understand how they can do that.
Well, how do they have all these bird chirping noises when there aren't any birds on the course either?
Those are piped in. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't
And
know
there's very few birds. I've seen a couple of birds, but I've never seen a squirrel.
That's AI before we knew it was AI, I guess.
Has anybody else been aware of that? That there's
Well,
squirrels
I
on
can't say I
Augusta?
was really looking for them the 5 or 6 times I was there, but I don't remember seeing one either. I have some friends next door.
I'd
I'll
like
ask
to
them if they have any on their property.
anybody that wants to hang a little, we certainly can do that. I did want to put in a shameless advertisement here for the GHS. Hopefully everybody on is a member. If not, that's great. Invite your friend to be a member. These Zoom features are one of the unique benefits of being a member. We started these during COVID because we couldn't meet. We plan to do them going forward, and we are now doing them on a calendar. If you remember, our last one was for the Masters with George and Eric presenting their collections, and with this one coinciding with the US Open. Mel Lucas was also on a prior one that was very interesting. So these are additional benefits to being a member of the GHS. We ask you to tap your neighbor and your friend and get them to join. And please, we're looking forward to see as many as possible in Lexington, October 11th through the 14th. We're going to be honoring Marion Miley, female golfer extraordinaire whose life was cut way short, and also honoring Gabe Brewer, Lexington's own native son, and multiple winner on the tour and a Masters winner, and his former caddy and a former pro club maker, Bob Boring, will be there to speak of all things unique and interesting about Mr. Brewer. So that's my plug for our wonderful organization. Any other questions, please? I don't know when Barry has to leave, but we will keep the Zoom open for a while for anybody.
Breakfast is at 8:30, so I have plenty of time.
Hey, Barry,
Okay.
Thanks, Barry.
Yes.
I have a question that sort of comes out of what was just spoken about. What's the course that you would most want to get onto that you haven't got onto?
I really want to go to England to get those, the majority of the British Open courses that I haven't played are in England.
I had one other question. I'm actually a dual citizen of Israel, and there's one golf course in all of Israel. Anyways, the Rothschild family built the course in 1961. I guess I commissioned him, and I started playing it obviously later on, but and people really loved that golf course, and it had seasoned really nicely. And then about 15 years ago, everybody got the idea that they got enamored of having a Pete Dye golf course. So they brought Pete Dye over and basically gutted the whole golf course and started over. So there's a Pete Dye golf course now. And, it's a good golf course. I don't think it's great. I think it's good. And a lot of people really wish that there would have been some blending of the old with the new. And I just wonder if you've had any experience with that sort of situation, when courses are redone.
Yeah, I think what I hear from places are it's too hard. And then all the architects come in, especially if it's a championship course, and Gil said the same thing to us. We're going to make it harder for tournament play, but easier for the older members to play. Well, the greens aren't any different from the older member play and the tournament play. So they didn't do it there. What they're doing at Oakmont, we have a lot of bunkers. We have 186 bunkers. They're taking some of the first bunkers out on par fours that members hit into, but the pros don't even look at it, don't even think about it, because they're hitting it so much further down the hole. So I think that's probably what I'm hearing from Oakmont in particular. I've been around. My father joined in '65. I wasn't playing then, but I've been around a long time, been on the archives committee for a long time. I have seen all the pictures from beginning. I'm questioning a few things that Gil is doing, but I'm never going to question him on it. It looks great. I think it's going to be fine, but just not sure why he's done a couple of things other than it's in that time period from 1925 to 35 that he's trying to get to. The phones were still there after that, and they took some of the features out, took some of the bunkers out. So I'm not exactly sure why we'd want to put them back in just because it was in that period. If you want to do what phones wanted, then you do that. You don't just do it as he saw the course in a given time period. I would think it would be more important to be looking at the final product when they were no longer there, when they left the place. That's my opinion.
Well, thanks. This has been really, really fun to listen to.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
And it must be a very calm day there because I don't see any waves out there in the bay.
It happens once in a while. You get a
Okay.
clear day.
Any comments about Pine Valley?
When I had a top three, that was in the top three. I think, they've got a great set of holes there. I think the work they've done over the last handful of years has been great, widening the course. Same as a lot of the other courses. There were trees and they get bigger, and now the pathways to the hole are narrower. Great course. If I had to pick a sixth one for my top three or top five, that may be it.
Yeah, well, when you're at Oakmont, that's pretty special. I mean, with 9 prior opens and 4 scheduled, I mean, pretty impressive.
We've been very fortunate. We have a great relationship with the USGA.
And it's interesting, Barry, what you alluded to earlier. You're either a PGA course or a USGA course with very few exceptions. So, and if I remember growing up in the 60s and 70s, the PGA courses never seemed to play as hard back in those days when they had the tournament as the US Open courses. They forever talked about US Open rough, and I never remember them talking about PGA rough back in the day. But now it's like they're trying to almost emulate the US Open formula.
I think the rap against them is, hey, it's the fourth major. It's the least watched. It's this, it's that, and perception becomes reputation, and vice versa. And but they have a big carrot to tangle out there with the Ryder Cup, especially in the southern courses. Now, I'm not sure that it's. If it gets back into October, it's going to be tough for some of the northern courses. You get a freeze, it makes it awfully difficult. But the Ryder Cup financially is in a completely different classification than a US Open or a PGA.
And I don't really know the answer to this. Under whose auspices is the Ryder Cup? Who is the who's the entity behind that?
PGA.
That's PGA, okay.
Yes.
I never knew that.
PGA of America, not the PGA Tour.
Correct.
Very good.
Hey, Barry,
Yes.
any advice for those of us who are not members of an Oakmont caliber private club, of how we could get onto solid exclusive private clubs? Like what's the talking points?
Did you hear my one comment that I've been saying for many, many years? Golf is truly a contact sport. That not physical contact, but making contacts. And that it certainly helped me. Now, I had it a little easier because of where I'm a member and who our pro was for many, many years. But there are a lot of golf societies out there. If you heard 1,000 Greens, that's just one of many. And I think that's a great organization for people. I joined it 2.5 years ago. not to get on places because I've been a lot of places and my list of where I wanted to go was short, but really to meet other great people. And in the 2.5 years, I think I've used it 4 times to go somewhere, kind of remote courses that just I was in an area and needed something. But I've hosted 25 times. So, but there are a number of those, Outpost Club, well, names aren't coming to me, but it's
Preserve links and
it's just getting involved in those and or getting a bigger network. It can be done. There are stories out there. If I can do it, then anybody can do it. So
Yeah, by the same token, I mean, I've been invited to bunches of places purely because of the GHS and the people I've met. And, you know, it's start somewhere. And then once you see 2 or 3 people, you get to know this person, that person.
right.
It grows. That contact's exactly what Barry's saying. And I'm nothing like what Barry's done, but the opportunities are, you know, multiply. Just showing
Mhm.
up to the regional meetings and the annual meeting. And all of a sudden you get invited places you never thought you'd go.
Mhm.
I just noticed on the call, Steve Morgan, one of our GHS members from Syracuse. Anybody that's in and around the Northeast, if they're available on July 8th and play Hickory clubs, Steve has arranged a soiree at Bellevue, a Donald Ross gem in Syracuse for Saturday, July 8th in the afternoon. You're more than welcome to come if you're a Hickory player. Fabulous course. We're going to have some dinner there that night and some Donald Ross history.
Thank you for that, Bill.
You're welcome, Steve.
Barry, I
Yes.
heard you liked Rayner. I'm a member of Blue Mound in Milwaukee. Have you played Fisher's Island?
Been blessed 4 times.
Oh,
It-
wow.
It was in my top 3, and as I announced tonight, it's in my top 5. It's if you played there,
No, I have not.
okay. It's the setting is just spectacular, and all the template holes are very good. So
Yeah. Yeah, I joined Blue Mound about 10 years ago, and I've been making a tour of Rayner courses, and it's on one of those that I'd love to play, but played about 15 so far. So
okay, I just have you by a couple.
yeah.
I'm hoping to expand my list next
Have you
couple of
played
years.
Blue Mound?
I have. Do you know?
Okay.
I probably shouldn't say this in a group, but do you know Jan Pierce? Who
Yes.
was a member there?
Yes.
Distant relative of mine that I played with them there.
Okay. Yeah, I got to play Chicago and Shore Acres, and we go around there, and I mean, it's just so cool.
Yes. I tell the story. I played Shore Acres one day and Blue Mound the next. And I said, if someone blindfolded me and put me on one of those courses, it would take me a little while to figure out which one I was on. I think they were just both, well, any Rayner course can be similar with the template holes, but conditioning was superb in both of them.
Well, it looks like we're drawing to a close. Barry, I want to thank you so much, especially the extra effort you had to put into resurrecting your old photos as you transferred everything over to your Apple platform. You probably have enough for a nice pictorial book, though, going down the road.
Well, north of 20,000. So
Wow.
yeah,
I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Mr. Capers on the call. And if John would just like to say a few words about the opens that have been at Marion, just to sign a cap off your involvement with Marion since John's been there so often. John, if you would, please.
You got to pay me to say something.
You can send me a
John.
bill. You can send me a bill.
I'll do that. Yeah, we've been fortunate enough, as you know, to have the first one in 1934, then 50, then 71, then 81, then 13. We're headed for 2030, and then again for 2050. I think one of the most intriguing things to me, more than anything else, is it goes back to a comment that was made by Byron Nelson when they asked him, you are known so well for being the one who transitioned so successfully from hickory to steel. In your lifetime, what do you think is the most important change in the game of golf? He didn't even take a second to respond, and he said the lawnmower. Now, speed of play today is a greens problem. I'm not going to be for or against it. I'm just making a flat statement. The fairways that I played today at Marion are faster than the greens were in 1950. They were running at about 6. By 1971, they were running at 8.5. By 1981, they were running at 12. By 2013, they were running at 14. We tried to keep them closer to 13, and we were able to do that, except for one thing, and that was Saturday morning. They, as I think Barry knows, they stimp these greens about an hour before the first group goes off, and they give you a number. That's what the stimp meter says. Well, it's not what really happens on every hole, because some of them, they couldn't possibly play at that level. And those that have been to Marion know the 5th green. Well, the 5th green, we cut once. All the other greens, we double cut and rolled in the evening and then again in the morning. The 5th green was rolling maybe at 10, but playing at 13. And that's a lot of what happens. And Oakmont, I know, is the same way. Fortunate to have played there a number of times. Actually, Barry, I was talking to a bunch of your Oakmont members this morning.
Okay.
The green speed is what has changed on golf courses. Marion, fortunately, routing has not changed. The only change that Gil made when we did the renovation was he took the second green and picked it up, and the front of the green is now where the back of the green was before. But we made that change also in 1932, prior to the 34 Open, so it wasn't anything new. But earlier in the discussion, you were talking about bunkers, and I could go on for a long time, as Bill knows, but I'll leave it at this. Those that have played Marion, the 8th hole has that huge cavernous bunker in front of the green, but it has 2 fairway bunkers staggered, one left, one right. When we redid that golf course, we took 3 feet of sand out of the bunker on the left.
Wow.
And all we did was take them back to the level in which they were originally done. Sand doesn't disappear when you redo bunkers. You put sand on top of what's currently there. So we took a ton of sand out of the bunkers at Marion, and everybody said we raised the lips and made the bunkers deeper. Well, we did the latter, but we didn't do the former.
Mm-hmm.
And when they played those bunkers, when they were first built, they were using niblets and mashies and, whatever was there. Now they have sand wedges at 60 degrees. So they're a little bit deeper, but they play the same. And I think that's what Gil does so well. When he did Marion, the other thing he did is he shortened the golf course by 1,000 yards. Now, Mike Davis said when he played there in 13, this golf course will not exceed 6,996 yards. But even at 6,500, which is the middle tees, and 6,000, which is the forward tees, there are a lot of places that the senior members and women could not hit the second shot on the green, or they couldn't carry a cross bunker like the 4th hole. So what Gil did is on 10 holes, he put tees as much as 150 yards in front of where the other tees were. And that made the golf course playable for everybody. And I think, to your comment, Barry, the changes that have been done at Oakmont, which are spectacular, by the way, has made it tougher for the good players and easier for the member play. And if an architect can do that, then you've gotten your money's worth. If he's just made it tougher, put it bluntly, he's probably screwed up the golf course.
Mm-hmm. But to add on what you said, John, about shortening, he's doing that quite a bit on our course, putting in new tees, forward tees. And there's been a lot of question about that, because our forward tees, the red tees, Our 5,600, we have the medallions and the fairway that are 5,000. People are thinking, oh, how much shorter does it have to be? But he is putting in new tees.
Well, I'll tell you this, I defy anybody to play the new forward tees at Marion, no matter how good you are, and say it isn't a tough golf course. Some of those holes are a hell of a lot tougher where they are now compared to where they were before. Because if you're a good player, you're hitting the ball long enough that all of a sudden you have to rethink every single tee shot on those 10 holes. You got to rethink where you're going to put it. You got to rethink what you're going to hit for your next shot into the green. And instead of hitting a driver back where it was before, you might be hitting a 7-iron off the tee. So you got a full wedge into the green. So it is just as intriguing and fun to play at 5,000 yards as it is further back.
Good.
Sometimes mentally it's a pain in the neck.
I want to go back to John, comment about USGA and green speed. I was fortunate to get Mike Davis's daily reports for 2 opens to Oakmont and the grounds committee. And I've always had the belief that they were adamant about having the same green speed on all the holes. I was shocked to find out that they intentionally played 1, 10, and 12 a little slower than the other greens because of the sloping away from you. I just kind of blown because for 30 years I thought it was one way, and here the actual letters had something different to say.
Barry, one of the things, 12 to me is one of the most intriguing greens in golf. And I remember the first time I played there was prior to prepping for the amateur, and I hit the ball on the very front edge and the pin was all the way back left. And I asked the caddy what to do, and he said, hit it 10 feet to the right of the pin, but only hit the ball 6 feet. And you know how long that green is. And
right.
So, you know what? It almost went past the hole by a couple of feet. So I've never seen anything that was that, in some cases, easy to read if you had the right guy helping you. Tough to figure out the green speeds because of the slopes. You've done a great job on that golf course.
Well, I agree with that. They are very true greens, but getting the speed is the whole recipe that you need to play well there. Now,
it's a pleasure to have been a winner in the SWAT book.
Okay. I'm going to throw out a couple numbers for people because someone else brought up John brought up the stip meter. We set a record 2 years ago for the SWAT party. Green speed was 1711.
Oh, Jesus.
The super tried everything. He wanted 18 feet and he couldn't get that last inch. Fastest I've ever played them, 16.5. And most of the members like them fast, but you know that there's a line that should be drawn in the sand there as to how fast. But it's I believe it was Lee Trevino said, if you want to practice putting before going to Oakmont, putt in your bathtub towards the drain and try to stop it before it gets there.
You know, it was interesting, the one time I played and you took us around, your caddies are so good there. He quickly sized up how you hit the putt, and he just said, play it out here, play it like it's a 5-foot putt. And you're right, the greens were so true. If you hit it to the area, I mean, I know, and I'm not a great player, but I did 3 putts that day over 30 feet. They dropped just hitting it where the caddy told me to hit it. It was nuts. I couldn't believe it.
Well, what I tell guests, I said, trust your caddy until you can't. And I said, that usually never happens. So, yeah.
Remarkable. George, do you have anything to add?
No, I'm just soaking it in and imagining what 1711 would be. That is insane. The course I play a Tillinghast course, and very undulating, and it routinely stimped 13 to 14. And it's just like, you never aim for the pin. You just low side, and then low side means off the green on the low side. So, I mean, it's a lot of work. And they would say, "Oh, that course is so short." And I go, "Oh yeah, go play it." I got invited to play there because I just moved to this town that I'm in. And they said, "You got to belong to the country club." I'm like, "Okay, I'll go." And they just aerated the greens. And it was all sandy, full of holes. And I play and I shoot like 75. And I go, "Wait till I come back in 3 weeks. I'm going to kill this Tillinghast course. I'm going to eat it up." 95. I mean, I putted off the green like 4 times. It was like, oh my God. So it taught me how to play golf. A tough course with by a great architect to me teaches you how to play golf.
Well, unfortunately, everybody wants the greens really fast because they see it on TV. But a lot of greens were not built to be fast. And when Don Ross was building courses, green speed was 6 or 7. Maybe he had some that were 8. And now the membership says, "Oh, we need to get them to 12. Well, ball won't stay on the green.
I wonder what the sand greens stimped, like the Ross sand greens. I wonder what that would have been.
Well,
They
George,
didn't have a step meter till
most of your
1935, but
most of your sand greens were flat.
Yeah.
Dead flat, oil-based sand on top, and you drag matted them after you played every hole. So, to the best of my knowledge, Barry, tell me if I'm wrong on this. I don't know of any course that had sand greens that had huge undulations to speak of. Maybe a little slope because of the texture of the ground, but that was all.
I agree. Yep.
By the way, there used to be a standing bet at Augusta. I don't know if they still do it, maybe because of the maximum amount of play. But when it was very slow play, that you'd play 18 holes, but on every hole, the caddy was allowed to position a ball on the green and bet you couldn't 3-putt. And I saw it done in one round, and not one guy 3-putted once. I mean, a couple of guys nailed it in the hole out of dead solid luck, but you just can't. Those greens are so undulating and fast that it's just not possible. Can't be done. That's why it's so important. And I can understand your reason, Barry, for ranking it the way you do. It is a second shot golf course, period.
And even still, the greens aren't nearly. There's 1 week out of the 52 where they're really fast, and we all watch it on TV. I was there 2.5 weeks after the tournament, and they weren't anywhere near what they would have been during the tournament.
Well, in that temperature, they couldn't possibly do that. What you have at Oakmont, with the temperature going below 70 degrees almost every single night, usually a lot more than that, that's how Poana survives as well as it does. If you guys went to Philadelphia, you'd burn every one of those greens out. That's why we had to go to all of the work that we're the only golf course in the world where the greens are air conditioned, but the men's locker room isn't.
Well, we have half of that. We're the bad half of that.
Gentlemen, ladies, it's been a pleasure. Look forward to doing it again. Thanks very much, Bill, for putting this together. It's been a lot of fun for me.
Take care, John.
Barry, again, thanks so much. Give you a big round of applause there. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a
Thanks,
first
everyone.
timer for something like this. I mean, where it wasn't a financial Zoom call, so.
Yeah, it's more fun that way.
All right.
All right.
Take
Well, good
care.
night, everybody.
Have a good
and,
night.
Hope to see y'all in Lexington in October.
Thanks a lot, Barry.
Thank you,
Thank
Barry.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.